Hey, when do you sump your fuel tanks when you go fly? You do it when you pull out of the hangar? Do you do it when you fill up the tank after you're done flying? We're going to check out this whole thing. And why do you sump the tanks anyway? Hey, I'm Scott Perdue, and today on FlyWire, we're going to check out sumping your tanks. We're going to check out water in the fuel and talk a little bit about it, and we're going to do some sciencey shit. Or, I'm sorry, we're going to do some science. Yeah, this is my new gas jar. Well, actually it's not, it's just a ball jar. But we're going to do some science stuff, and we're going to try to figure out just how long it really takes for water to fall out of solution. And then it becomes a problem, because if you get a water slug, that's when your engine will quit. And when it quits, you know, that could be a bad thing, especially if you're in the air. So let's check out this science stuff. Believe the data. Okay, so we're going to do a little experimentation, and we're going to look at avgas and water. All right, so everybody knows that on the good bad scale, having water in your gas is bad. The piston engines just don't like water. They don't run well on water, you know, and diesels don't run that great either, because, you know, water's pretty hard to burn. But especially a slug of water, all right? And what it leads to is power loss or failure. So entrained water, by the way, is water that's in solution. That's probably how the normal way you're going to get it in your tank is via water entrained. And generally, it's accepted that you can tolerate it to about 30 parts per million. How much is that? That's just, it's like, I don't know, 30 grams per 1,000 kilograms, 2,200 per ton. I mean, it isn't much water. But how can you get water in your tank? Well, water comes from the filler neck. You know, if it rained and you open it up and it lets in, or you've got a leaky O-ring, water's going to get in your tank. Condensation inside, if you have an empty tank, it's common actually for water to condense on the top and then drip into the fuel. That's possible. Or probably the most likely though is fuel contamination in the storage container or the fuel truck or something like that. But so anyway, we're going to look at this. This is avgas. They call it clean and bright, all right? It's bright blue, and it's clean. Now, there's no contaminants in it. I don't know if you can see that really well. I got a camera here so we can look at that. There's nothing in there, so that's important. Clean and bright, and that's what you want to see. And you usually want to take enough of a fuel sample that you'll be able to see what we're talking about here, either the little particles floating around or fuel. Okay, so interesting thing, by the way, is if you have entrained fuel in the sample that you have, or in your tank, it's going to take about 15 to 20 minutes for it to fall out of solution in a still environment. And what does that mean? That means that if you just refueled your airplane and you go to sump the tanks, and this I think is a pretty important point, if you go to sump the tanks, then you're not going to see slugs or little bubbles. Very unlikely you're going to see very much in the way of little bubbles or slugs of water in the fuel. If you're seeing that, it's probably because it's already fallen out of solution and it's in the tank. And so it's always a really good idea to sump your tanks when you first drag it outside to go flying. Or when you have it tied down, you go sump the tanks to see if it rained or something like in there. Okay, so we start with clean and bright. We're going to do a little science experiment. Okay, I'm going to open this ball jar up, and I have water. All right, and this is nice filtered water. I don't have any contaminants in it. Okay, I'm not testing for that today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour a pretty good slug of water in there. And that didn't go there, that goes there. Okay, but you see how this goes is it doesn't want to fall into solution. So what it does is it stays coherent and goes to the bottom of the tank. Okay, in this case you can see that. So you can really see the different levels. Water's heavier than fuel, so the fuel's going to ride on top of it, and you can see that. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to shake it up. Okay, we're going to put it in solution. And when we saw it just a second ago, the fuel on top of the water was clean and bright. Okay, look at it now. All right, it's not fully entrained, but when it's a buttload of water that I put in there, but you can see that it's cloudy and dull. All right, so that's what you're looking for, and you can also kind of start to see some crap on it. All right, so that's what you're going to see if you check your fuel right after you refuel. It's all been churning around and a lot more than I'm doing right now, so it's going to look cloudy and dull. And okay, so it's definitely not clean and bright, and it looks kind of goopy, you know. So that's what you're kind of looking for. So either you're going to use a fuel tester where you put it up there and plug it, and you're going to pull off a couple of inches of fuel and check it, or you're going to use this thing called a Getz jar. This is a gnarly looking doofer. So the interesting thing now, the claim on the Getz jar is that not only does it pull out particulate matter when you let it in, but it'll drain or screen the water off too. Okay, so I'm down. I know it's already stratified, so I'm not going to pour it all back in there. There's my water. I knew that was stratified there, so let that sit for a little bit. And it's starting to fall out of solution because I didn't really have it great in solution to begin with. Made a little bit of a mess. So what we're going to do is we're going to test this out, and I'm going to get rid of this water, and we're going to pour gas in this. All right, so here's the rest of our science experiment. Okay, so dried it out. There's no water left in this beaker, so what we're going to do is we can kind of see some water still there, and we're going to pour it into our sample, and it did keep a pretty good slug of water in there, but frankly it looks to me like it was imperfect because I see some water at the bottom of the tester. So I guess what that's telling us is that even if you're careful, you're going to see some water remain in the sample. So the EPA in some states don't want you to pour it out on the ground. Well, you don't want to pour it back in your tank either, so you're in a bit of a conundrum. And here, one interesting thing though is when you do pour it on the ground, what will happen is especially asphalt, the fuel will basically be absorbed by the asphalt fairly quickly, and the water will stay there and it'll kind of beat up. So that's an interesting result. So a little bit of water is left in the Getz jar. So it wasn't 100% effective, but then this is a pretty gnarly Getz jar, so maybe that's the problem. Anyway, if you want to know more about this, there's a lot of other stuff out there on the internet you can check out, and the FAA has a thing called Advisory Circular 20-125, and that really goes into more detail. It's a bit old, but it works, so you can check that out. And well, I think it's to sum it all up, really, it's a good idea to sump your tanks, because like I say, piston engines don't like water very much. They won't tolerate much entrained in it either. So sump your tanks, and if you see cloudy or you see water itself, well, keep sumping, and if you get a large amount, You know, like we had originally in our test, if you have that much water left over in your, you know, that you've been pulling out, don't fly. Drain the tanks, don't use that fuel, purge the tanks, clean them out, because you've got a problem and you got to fix it. You don't want to have your, be a test pilot trying to figure out just how much water your engine is going to tolerate. So, and if you see particulate matter, clean that stuff out too. If you see an awful lot, then what it really means probably is especially if you have fuel bladders, is your bladders are coming apart, and it's probably in your screener, in your fuel screen going into the engine. And eventually that's going to choke it up, and you're going to have a fuel starvation incident because of that. So all of that is the airplane telling you that something's wrong. Okay, you see some particulate matter, you see water. If it's just a little water, it's not a big deal. If it's a lot of water, it is a big deal. Purge your tanks, clean them, make sure they're clean, because, hey, your life depends on it. Okay, and my insurance rates. So anyway, hope you find that valuable. And if you like the video, hit subscribe. Really appreciate that. That really helps. If you like it, hit like. If you don't like it, just stop watching it. And don't hit don't like. Well, whatever. Do what you want. And if you like the channel and you want to support it, go to my Patreon page. There's a link to it right down below here, so you can check that out. Anyway, thanks for watching. I appreciate it, and we'll see you next time on FlyWire.